carbon versus alloy mast or aluminium or aluminum, depending where you are in the world. It is quite difficult to answer these questions like, is a carbon mast worth it? How much better is a carbon mast? How much stiffer is it? How, all these questions that people have about a carbon mast. First of all, I rode this Axis 19mm mast for over a year. I had the 75 and this is the 82, and I would switch those out. I'd just take off the base plate and the little adapter, and I would use the 82 for winging and the 75 for profiling. About a month ago, I got this high modulus mast, 75 centimeter, for a pretty good price. The main difference, of course, is the cost. So that's really going to be the biggest factor of whether you should buy carbon mast or not. But putting that aside, there aren't really any benefits to the carbon mast other than the cost. The cons are that it is going to flex more and it is less efficient because typically it is going to be a thicker mast, especially this one. This is a 19mm thick alloy mast, and the reason why it's so thick is so that it is a little bit stiffer than other alloy masts on the market. Axis also does have the 16mm. Not really sure who uses that. I think maybe kiteboarders, like kite foilers, or just super light riders might use that. The other con is that it is 3-piece construction. It is 3 pieces. So you have the top plate, 2 bolts on the top there, and you have this little adaptive thing. Different brands might have a different design, but in general, almost every brand has the top plate, which means more opportunity for play, as well as bolts corroding and seizing up. And in general, the alloy can corrode, so you have to make sure that you're rinsing it off if you're riding in salt water. Even if you're not riding in salt water, you got to dry them out. Otherwise, moisture can create corrosion. So that's the cons. It's up to you if the cost outweighs those cons, because they're not really that big of a deal. It's mainly the flex. But if you're a heavier rider, I would say that the flex is obviously a lot more noticeable. But like, if you're like me, I have this high modulus, and the flex, it still flexes, but it also depends on what front foil you're riding. So, for example, I rode a 1030 Spitfire for a while, and my first session on that with the alloy mast, I was like thrown off because of how like wobbly it was, but I got used to it. And again, on this mast, I ride the 1051 ALT Pro, and there's still a little bit of wobble, but the thing with the flex of the carbon mast is it feels like when it flexes, it has like a point that it reaches, and it doesn't keep on giving like wobble. It doesn't keep on flexing. Whereas the alloy, the flex characteristic is kind of all over the place. Like it feels like it can just keep flexing. And I have seen like pictures of people actually bending them. So that's not ever going to happen with the high mod carbon mast. So there is that. But yeah, the carbon, obviously more efficient because you have a thinner mast. So it slices through the water a lot easier. It's just less thickness and less surface area in the water, just like how if you have a skinnier front wing or a rear wing, it's gonna go faster. Of course, less corrosion because you don't have the screws on the top plate, so it's all one piece. There are less points of failure or less points that could come loose. As well, the top is just a molded kind of carbon piece that slides into the fuse. So basically no corrosion. There might be, like, you can see this one's a little bit stained, but like I said, the stiffness, you can turn harder and you get more feedback and response out of your foil. But then again, if you're if you are a lighter rider, and you're only riding small foils, you're probably not going to feel much of a difference as far as flex. But if you're on the other end, if you're a, heavy rider, 90 kg plus, and you're riding big front wings, dock starting, or just prone foiling, whatever, ALT Pro 1201, it's going to be super wobbly either way, but the carbon will be more manageable, especially the ultra high mod carbon. Now, one thing to note is no matter what brand you're going with or what brand you're riding, I have heard that the non-high modulus carbon mass are just not up to par with the newer high mod carbon mast, and almost every brand has a high mod mast. So if you're looking at like a secondhand carbon mast and it's one of the older like standard carbon mast, I'd probably steer away from that, just because it's still going to be like a decent chunk of money, but you're not really going to be getting that stiffness that you want from the carbon mast. So what it really boils down to is if you're willing to spend the money. There are, like I said, like I've been explaining, there are a few factors: weight of the rider, brand, also discipline. So like if you're kite foiling, you're probably riding little front wings, so it doesn't really matter. You're also sort of weighted by the kite. Wing foiling as well, you do feel the flex a little bit less, unless you're flagging out, riding onto waves. That's when you feel that flex. So it's really just all those factors: weight, discipline, gear, whether it's brand or like size of front wing. Bigger front wings are going to be more wobbly. But the main factor is the price, and that's on you. That's whether you just got to decide how much money you want to put into this hobby or this sport. But I'll leave you guys with one last message, and that is, don't worry too much. Like if you can't afford the alloy mast, or maybe you can, but it's like you already spent, $2-3 grand on boards and foils and all that, and you're like, oh, $1,800 for just a mast. That's like a little bit steep. Just don't worry about it. And in general, don't worry about like too much about the gear that you're on or the gear that you have. Just go out and ride and have fun, and like focus more on your riding and progression and having fun. Because I see so many people right now in foiling that they see these new front wings and all this new mast and gear stuff coming out, and they're like freaking out, thinking, oh, I spent so much money on all my gear like not even a year ago, and now it sucks. First of all, don't think that like the marketing of the new products means that your stuff sucks. The foil companies, they're just trying to sell gear. They're going to tell you that the new one is 10 times better. In reality, it's usually not. Like all the new stuff compared to like last year or the year before, the gains are quite marginal. Now, when you're switching from like low aspect to like a high aspect front wing, yeah, you're going to notice a big difference. But at the end of the day, the best foil setup is the one that you have. So just don't worry too much, So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.